She threw me on the street the day after my only son's funeral. She looked me dead in the eye, claiming the house was hers now, and with a laugh that still echoes in my nightmares, she whispered, "Hope you enjoy being homeless, Eleanor." But then, the lawyer opened the sealed envelope. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know exactly where you're watching from in the comments below. And hit that like button right now if you absolutely live for stories about instant, devastating karma. Let me tell you how this nightmare began. Because sometimes, the absolute best revenge is just stepping back and letting toxic people reveal exactly who they really are. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a cold, rain-swept Tuesday. The kind of ringing that tears through the silence of a house and stops a mother's heart before she even picks up the receiver. David's voice on the other end was strained, breathless, unrecognizable. "Mom! Something's wrong." My chest. "I can't," then, the terrifying click of the line going dead. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. By the time I rushed through the sliding glass doors of the emergency room, my 45-year-old son, my brilliant, kind, vibrant boy, was gone. Massive heart attack, the attending doctor explained, his voice carrying that practiced, clinical detachment they use to shield themselves from our shattering worlds. There was simply nothing we could do. Stephanie, my daughter-in-law, stood beside me in that sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room. Her face was a frozen mask of shock. But as I looked at her, desperate for shared comfort, I caught something else flickering in her eyes. It was a terrifying, fleeting shadow. Relief? No, I told myself, no, surely I was just losing my mind in the depths of my sudden, suffocating grief. What happens now? I whispered into the quiet room, my legs giving way as I sank into a plastic chair. I was utterly unable to process that David was just gone. Stephanie straightened her posture. Her shoulders squared, and for a terrifying second, her composure entirely slipped away. "Now we deal with reality, Eleanor. David is gone. And I have decisions to make." The absolute zero coldness in her voice sent a physical chill straight through my bones. Stephanie and I had never been close. We were two vastly different women orbiting the same sun. But David had always been the bridge between us. Now that the bridge had collapsed, I was staring down into the dark, bottomless chasm of who she truly was. "Of course, dear. We'll get through this together," I wept, reaching out a trembling hand to grasp hers. She pulled away, sharply, as if my touch burned. "We'll see about that." I should have recognized the warning in those venomous words. Instead, I gave her grace. People grieve differently, I told myself, crying myself to sleep that night. Some scream, some weep, others build walls. Stephanie was clearly building a fortress. The funeral arrangements consumed the next 3 agonizing days. I offered to empty my small savings to help pay for everything. David was my only child. Burying him felt like burying my own future. But Stephanie fiercely insisted on handling every single detail herself. "I'm his wife," she kept repeating, weaponizing the word. "I know what he would have wanted." Fair enough. I retreated. I focused on writing a eulogy through blinding tears, calling heartbroken relatives, and trying to keep my soul from shattering. At 67 years old, I had buried my parents. I had buried my beloved husband. But losing a child? It is a specific, unnatural kind of hell that leaves you gasping for air. The night before the funeral, I sat alone in what had once been David's childhood bedroom. I had been living with them for 2 years, ever since I sold my own modest home and gave them the $40,000 equity to help with their down payment. David had insisted it would be temporary, just until I found a smaller, manageable condo. But temporary stretched into permanent, and I had grown to love the routine of cooking their dinners and feeling useful. As I sat there, I looked at the dresser. There was David in his graduation gown. There was David at his wedding. There was David holding his newborn nephew, but my breath caught in my throat. I stood up, touching the empty spaces on the polished wood. Every single photograph of David and me, the mother and son pictures that used to sit right there, had been systematically removed. When had she done this? A soft, sharp knock interrupted my dread. Stephanie stood in the doorway. She was no longer bothering to hide the calculating, predatory look in her eyes. "We need to talk, Eleanor." The funeral was undeniably beautiful. I will give Stephanie that. The floral arrangements were dripping with elegance. The string quartet played David's favorite hymns flawlessly. The reception was a masterclass in social orchestration. What wasn't beautiful was watching my daughter-in-law play the tragic, weeping widow for the cameras, only to pivot the moment she thought no one was listening. I was standing near the receiving line, clutching a damp tissue and accepting hugs, when I heard Stephanie's voice slicing through the murmur of the crowd. She was standing behind a massive display of white lily, talking to her sister. "The life insurance alone is $250,000. It will cover the mortgage for years," she was saying, her tone brisk and excitedly low. "And without the extra expenses? What extra expenses? What about Eleanor?" her sister asked, her voice tight with a hint of actual concern. "Where will she go?" Stephanie's laugh was sharp, brittle, and utterly devoid of humanity. "That's not my problem anymore. She can figure it out like the rest of us adults." My blood ran like ice water through my veins. I was the extra expense. Before I could even process the betrayal, Stephanie appeared at my elbow, her public face of sorrow firmly glued back on. "Eleanor? Could you help me in the kitchen? There are some things we need to discuss." I followed her like a ghost walking to the gallows. Once the kitchen door swung shut, blocking out the mourners, the grieving widow vanished. "I'm going to be completely direct," she said, crossing her arms. Her voice was pure, unadulterated business. "This house is in David's name, which means it legally transfers to me. I need time and space to process my grief without complications." "Complications?" I asked, my voice trembling, my heart hammering against my ribs. "You living here. It's not working anymore, Eleanor. I need my privacy." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow to the stomach. "Stephanie, I understand you're grieving. I am too. My son is dead. But surely we can." "No." She held up a perfectly manicured hand, stopping me dead. "I've made my decision. I will give you until tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. to pack your things and get out." "That should be plenty of time." I stared at her. I searched her eyes for any trace of the young woman who used to call me Mom, who had hugged me tightly at Christmas, who had wept tears of joy when David proposed. That woman was dead, replaced by a cold, calculating stranger. "Where exactly do you expect me to go?" I choked out. Stephanie merely shrugged, turning away to inspect a platter of sandwiches. "You're a grown woman, Eleanor. You'll figure something out." "David would be absolutely horrified by this conversation," I whispered. She turned back, her eyes flashing with a cruel, triumphant light. "David is dead." The words were flat, absolute, and designed to cause maximum pain. "And the sooner you accept that, the better off we will both be." I packed my entire existence into 4 battered suitcases and 2 cardboard boxes. 67 years of life, reduced to what could fit in the trunk of an aging sedan. As I folded my sweaters and wrapped the few photographs she hadn't managed to hide, I kept waiting for the door to open. I kept waiting for her to rush in, crying, apologizing, blaming her cruelty on the blinding pain of grief. She never came. At exactly 6 p.m., the door swung open. Stephanie stood there, arms crossed, tapping her foot. "Time's up, Eleanor." I zipped the final suitcase. I looked around the room that had been my sanctuary for 2 years. Stripped of my blankets, my books, my essence, it looked like a sterile guest room again, which, I realized with a crushing weight, was all it had ever been to her. "I'll need just a few more minutes to carry these down to the car," I said quietly. "I'll help you." It wasn't an act of kindness. It was an eviction enforcement. She wanted to physically watch me leave her property.
Ma'am, you need
We
to
made
come with
3
us.
trips down the stairs in
This has been a
agonizing
mistake.
silence. As I loaded the
Ma'am,
final
hands where I
box
can
into
see
my
them.
trunk, the rain beginning to mist around us, I turned to her. I made one last desperate appeal to whatever shredded remnants of humanity she might possess. "I know you're angry with me, Stephanie. I just wish I knew what I had done wrong so I could fix it."
Her expression remained carved from stone.
You didn't do anything wrong, Eleanor. You just exist. In my space. In my life. In my way. David felt sorry for you. I don't. The brutal honesty took my breath away. But strangely, it was cleaner than the polite, fake smiles we'd shared for years. I see. I got into my car and rolled down the window, the engine sputtering to life. Will you at least tell me if there's going to be a formal reading of David's will? I assume he left something. Stephanie actually laughed. A genuine sound of amusement. Why on earth would he leave you anything? You're not his wife, and it's not like you ever contributed financially to our household. The irony was so sharp it physically cut me. The $40,000 I had handed them for this very driveway I was parked in apparently meant nothing. She had either conveniently erased it from her memory or twisted it in her mind into a mandatory gift. Of course, I said softly. Silly of me to assume. I put the car in drive and pulled away. I didn't look back. But in the rearview mirror, I watched her stand in the driveway, hands on her hips, guarding her castle until my taillights faded into the fog. I checked into the Hampton Inn on Route 9. It was the cheapest place I could find that didn't feel completely unsafe. I dragged my suitcases into a generic room that smelled overwhelmingly of industrial. Bleach and broken dreams. I sat on the stiff polyester bedspread and stared at my reflection in the cheap mirror above the dresser. Who was this hollow-eyed woman looking back at me? A widow.
Now completely childless, homeless, and apparently
entirely worthless in the eyes of the only family she had left in the world. But as I sat there, in the silence of that sterile room, crying until I couldn't breathe, something unexpected began to spark deep inside my chest.
Ma'am, you need to come
It
with
wasn't
us.
just despair.
What is this? There's been a
it was
mistake.
something sharper. Hotter.
Ma'am,
Stephanie
hands where I can
thought
see
she
them.
had won.
She thought she had successfully discarded the inconvenient aging mother-in-law and claimed her grand prize. What Stephanie didn't know was that my son, my beautiful, observant David, was a much better man than she had ever given him credit for. 2 weeks into my hotel stay, as I sat at the small desk calculating how many days I had left before my savings completely ran dry, my phone buzzed. Mrs. Fairfield? This is James Morrison, from Morrison & Associates. I handled your son's legal affairs. I sat up straight. Yes, Mr. Morrison.
I remember you from the house closing.
I'm calling to inform you that the probate process has been expedited. There will be a formal reading of David's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required. I blinked, my heart doing a strange flutter. My presence? I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but I think there's a misunderstanding.
Stephanie made it very clear that I can only tell you what the legal document specifies.
Mrs. Fairfield,
he interrupted gently but firmly.
And it specifically names you as a beneficiary.
I will see you Tuesday.
I hung up the phone with trembling hands. David had left me something. Probably a keepsake. His father's vintage watch, or perhaps his childhood photo albums. Whatever it was, Stephanie was going to be furious. But she would just have to swallow it. The following Tuesday, at exactly 1:45 p.m., I sat in my dusty sedan in the law firm's parking lot. I watched Stephanie pull up in a gleaming silver BMW. She stepped out wearing a designer black dress that likely cost more than my entire monthly pension. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by her brother, Marcus, a corporate shark in a tailored suit who looked like he was ready for a hostile takeover. When I walked into the mahogany-paneled reception area, Stephanie's head snapped toward me. Her eyes narrowed into slits. What is she doing here? She demanded of the receptionist, her voice dripping with venom. Mrs. Fairfield is here for the will reading, the young woman replied evenly. Which Mrs. Fairfield? Stephanie's voice rose to a shrill pitch. Both of you, apparently.
Ma'am,
Marcus leaned down, whispering rapidly into Stephanie's ear. She shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, then took a seat on the farthest opposite side of the room. The war lines were officially drawn. Mr. Morrison ushered us into his spacious office. He was a dignified man in his 60s, with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses.
The kind of lawyer who still believed the law was about justice, not just loopholes.
"Ladies, gentlemen," he began, settling behind his massive desk.
I know this is an unimaginably difficult time, but David was extremely specific about his final wishes.
"I will read the will in its entirety." Stephanie leaned forward, literally sitting on the edge of her seat, her hands clasped tightly. Marcus pulled out a leather-bound legal pad, clicking his expensive pen. I simply folded my hands in my lap and prayed for strength. The first 10 minutes were exactly what I expected. The house, the cars, the massive life insurance policy, the retirement portfolios, all to his beloved wife, Stephanie. With every item listed, Stephanie nodded in smug satisfaction, shooting me victorious little glances from the corner of her eye. But then Mr. Morrison took a slow breath. The atmosphere in the room instantly grew heavy. There is, however, one final provision. An amendment David added just 3 months ago. Stephanie stopped nodding. Her spine went rigid. Marcus stopped writing. I found myself holding my breath, the silence in the room suddenly deafening. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. "To my mother, Eleanor Fairfield, who sacrificed her own security to provide the $40,000 down payment for our home,
and who never once asked for repayment. I leave the entire contents of Safety Deposit Box E337 at First National Bank, along with all associated documentation, investment portfolios, and account information contained therein."
"What safety deposit box?"
Stephanie's voice cracked like a whip.
David never had a safety deposit box. Apparently, it was an account he maintained strictly privately, Mr. Morrison replied smoothly. His instructions were absolute. The contents belonged solely to his mother. "What's in it?" Marcus demanded, his lawyer instincts flaring as he leaned over the desk.
Ma'am, you need to come with us.
"I have absolutely no idea,"
There's been a mistake.
Mr. Morrison said. David only
Ma'am,
provided
hands
the
where I can
bank
see them.
details and the key, with instructions that Mrs. Fairfield is to be granted immediate, exclusive access upon his death. Stephanie's face flushed a ugly mottled red. She slammed her hand on the armrest. "This is completely ridiculous. If there is anything of monetary value in that box, it legally belongs to the estate. We are contesting this immediately." "You are certainly free to waste your money trying, ma'am," Mr. Morrison said, his voice dropping an octave into pure steel. "But the provision is ironclad."
David was perfectly competent, and I personally witnessed and notarized the amendment. When exactly did he add this?
I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mr. Morrison looked at the date. February 15th of this year. February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. I remembered that night so clearly. Stephanie had spent the entire dinner screaming at David about wanting a kitchen remodel, calling him a failure for not earning a bigger bonus. David had sat in utter silence, staring at his plate. He had made his decision that very night. "This is a massive waste of my time," Stephanie snarled, shooting up from her chair. "Marcus, let's go."
We're filing an injunction first thing tomorrow.
"Actually," Mr. Morrison said, reaching into his desk drawer. "Before you leave, David left specific instructions that his mother is to receive this immediately." He handed me a thick, heavy sealed envelope. "These are the bank documents and the physical key, Eleanor. The bank will need 3 business days to process the death certificate. Then the box is yours." Stephanie's eyes locked onto that envelope like a starving predator. "I am going to the bank with you." "I'm afraid that's physically impossible," Mr. Morrison interjected, standing up. "The bank mandate restricts access to Eleanor Fairfield only. Bank policy. No exceptions. This is insane." Stephanie screamed, completely losing her elegant facade. "How do we even know there's anything valuable in there? It could be empty. It could be worthless, sentimental junk." I stood up slowly, clutching the heavy envelope to my chest. I looked her dead in the eye. "I suppose I will find out next week."
Ma'am,
As I
you need
walked
to come
out
with
to the
us.
parking
What
lot,
is this?
I could
There's
feel
been
the
a
heat of her
mistake.
rage burning into my back.
Ma'am, hands
Before
where
I
can
could
see them.
even unlock my car, she cornered me against the door. "Eleanor, let's be reasonable. Her tone was suddenly sickeningly sweet, a complete 180-degree turn.
Whatever is in that box.
We should open it together.
We should share it. David would have wanted his grieving wife to benefit from his final assets. For the first time since my son's heart stopped beating, a genuine smile touched my lips.
You made it devastatingly clear last week that you didn't believe David would leave me a single dime.
Now, suddenly, you're deeply concerned about sharing?
I'm just saying, you're saying whatever you think will manipulate me into letting you see inside that box.
I opened my car door.
But David was specific. It is mine. Her mask shattered completely, revealing the monster underneath. She leaned in close, her breath hot on my face.
Don't forget your place, Eleanor. You are an old, homeless woman sleeping in a cheap motel.
You need my goodwill a hell of a lot more than I need yours. I paused, looking at her with nothing but pity.
Actually, Stephanie, I don't think I need anything from you at all.
3 agonizing days later, I stood deep inside the subterranean vault of First National Bank. The heavy steel door of box
E337 stared back at me. The bank manager,
a kind woman named Mrs. Peterson, used her master key while I inserted David's brass key with trembling fingers. The locks clicked in unison. The heavy metal drawer slid out.
Take all the time you need, Mrs. Fairfield, she whispered softly, leaving me alone in the private, soundproof viewing room. I sat at the table. I lifted the metal lid. The very first thing sitting on top was a handwritten letter. Mom. Tears instantly blurred my vision as I traced his familiar handwriting.
I broke the seal and began to read. Mom, if you're reading this, then my heart finally gave out and I am gone.
And I know without a shadow of a doubt that Stephanie has already shown you exactly who she really is. I am so incredibly sorry for that. But I am not surprised. I've known for years what kind of person I married. I was just too much of a coward to face the divorce.
But I have been
Sir,
preparing for this day. My hands shook violently as I read the next lines.
You gave us $40,000 for this house. I know you called it a gift to protect my pride, but I never forgot your sacrifice. For the past 5 years, I have been taking money from my private bonuses and quietly investing it under your name.
The money in the accompanying accounts isn't just repayment.
Mom, it's what aggressive, careful investing has grown into. I gasped, putting the letter down. I scrambled through the stack of official bank statements underneath. I flipped to the bottom lines, my eyes widening in utter disbelief. Account 1, $65,000. Account 2, $80,000. Account 3, $40,000. A grand total of $185,000. Legally secured. Fully accessible. Entirely in my name. I sobbed, burying my face in my hands. But as I picked up the letter again, the tears of sorrow turned to tears of absolute shock. I also know what she's been doing to you, the letter continued. I know she tells her friends you are a leech who contributes nothing. What she intentionally hides is that our monthly mortgage has been automatically deducted from my salary account since the day we moved in. You never owed us a dime. Any grocery or utility money you gave her out of your meager pension? She pocketed it. She used your guilt to fund her luxury shopping sprees. But I didn't just let it happen. Mom, I have been documenting everything. Every vile text, every cruel email, every receipt showing her deceit. It's all in the red folder beneath this letter. I thought you should finally see the truth about the woman sleeping down the hall. Take this money. Buy a beautiful little house. Build a life where no one can ever make you feel small or unwanted ever again. And Mom, don't tell Stephanie about any of this until you are safely out of her reach. Trust me. All my love. Forever. David. I sat in that silent, airless room for 2 solid hours. I read every single document in that thick red folder. I read printouts of emails where Stephanie mocked my outdated clothes. I saw photos of credit card statements showing $2,000 spa weekends paid for with the money I thought was keeping the lights on. By the time I finally emerged from the vault,
Ma'am,
the heartbroken, grieving mother was gone.
There's been a mistake.
She was replaced by a woman forged in absolute iron. As I walked to my car, my cell phone rang. It was Stephanie. Eleanor.
Her voice was a symphony of fake, sugary sweetness.
I was just thinking about you.
I was wondering if you'd like to come over to the house for a lovely lunch today?
We could catch up.
And maybe discuss what you found at the bank? I stopped in the parking lot, looking at my reflection in the car window. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face.
That is incredibly generous of you, Stephanie.
I would absolutely love to come over. I'll be there at noon.
I arrived at her house, excuse me. Her house at exactly 12 p.m. I carried a small, decorative gift bag and wore my absolute best poker face. She opened the door wearing a flowing designer white dress. The grieving widow act was gone.
She looked like she was ready for a Hamptons garden party.
Eleanor.
Come in. Come in. She practically dragged me to the dining room.
The table was perfectly set with the expensive wedding china I had bought them. Fresh peonies in a crystal vase. I made your favorite chicken salad.
Funny, I thought, taking my seat.
She hasn't remembered my favorite food in 2 years.
Now that I have a key to a vault, I get the royal treatment. She poured me a glass of iced tea,
chattering endlessly about the weather, the neighbors, her upcoming healing retreat to Bali. Finally, she couldn't take the suspense anymore. She folded her hands on the table and leaned in.
So,
she purred, her eyes gleaming with greed.
I've been doing a lot of soul searching, Eleanor. I know we've had our petty differences, but David would want his 2 favorite women to support each other.
Family should stick together, don't you agree?
Family. The sheer audacity of the word coming from her mouth made me want to laugh out loud.
I couldn't agree more.
Stephanie, I replied evenly, taking a delicate bite of my salad. She beamed, thinking she had me right where she wanted me. Oh, I'm so relieved. I was worried you were still holding a grudge about the housing situation. But you understand, I just needed space to breathe. Anyway, regarding whatever David left you, I was thinking we should pool our resources.
Combine your
Sir,
box contents with my life insurance payout.
What is this?
I have
There's
some
been a
brilliant
mistake.
financial advisors who could multiply it for us.
Hands where I can see them.
Multiply it. Yes, just like she multiplied the grocery money I gave her into designer shoes.
That is incredibly thoughtful, I said, dabbing my mouth with a linen napkin.
But tell me, what makes you so convinced there was actually money in that box?
She blinked, momentarily thrown.
Well, David was secretive. He must have been hoarding cash. You know how men are, they never tell us wives everything.
Oh, I think David told you exactly as much as he felt you deserved to know, I countered, my voice dropping its friendly cadence. A flicker of genuine fear crossed her eyes. What exactly did you find, Eleanor? I didn't answer right away.
Instead, I reached into my gift bag and pulled out a beautifully wrapped flat square. Before we discuss that, I brought you a gift.
A peace offering.
She tore the paper open eagerly. Her face fell. It was the framed photograph of David from his college graduation, the exact one she had hidden from my room.
Oh,
thank you, she forced out. I thought you should have it, I said, staring directly into her soul. After all, you were such a
devoted wife. She slammed the frame face down on the table.
The fake sweetness vanished instantly, replaced by pure venom.
Cut the crap, Eleanor. You're being cryptic and annoying.
What was in the damn box?
I smiled.
I reached into my oversized purse and pulled out the thick, heavy red folder.
I dropped it on the fine china plate with a loud, satisfying thwack. Documents mostly, I said conversationally. Fascinating reading material. Bank statements,
investment portfolios, and quite a few printed text messages.
All the blood violently drained from Stephanie's face. She looked like a ghost. Text. Messages? Yes. I opened the folder, pulling out the first sheet. David was astonishingly thorough in his record keeping.
For instance, would you like me to read this one out loud? It's a screenshot from 6 months ago, sent to your sister. I held the paper up, reading in a mocking, high-pitched voice. God, I cannot wait until
Sir,
that old bat
ma'am,
finally
you need
moves
to come
out
with
or
us.
dies.
What is this? There's
Then
been
we
a
can finally
mistake.
turn her ugly room into my home gym.
Ma'am, hands where I can
Stephanie
see
lunged across the table to grab the paper, knocking over her crystal water glass.
I pulled it back swiftly, out of her reach.
I chided. There are dozens more. Oh,
Here's a brilliant one. It's an email to your brother Marcus, outlining your strategy to manipulate David into making me pay rent, even though the mortgage was already entirely covered by his salary. Stop! Stephanie choked out, her breathing turning jagged and panicked.
and my personal favorite, I continued ruthlessly, pulling out a color-printed photo. A credit card statement showing a $3,000 charge at a luxury resort in Miami.
On the exact same weekend, you sat at this very table and cried to David that we couldn't afford
To fix the broken water heater, I laid the
papers out on the wet tablecloth, like I was dealing a winning hand of poker.
You were planning my eviction while my son was still breathing, Stephanie. You made me feel like a useless burden while actively stealing the money I gave you for groceries to fund your spa days. Stephanie was hyperventilating, her hands gripping the edge of the mahogany table so hard her knuckles were stark white.
He had no legal right to save my private messages.
You can't prove any of this in court. Court?
I threw my head back and let out a genuine, booming laugh.
Oh, honey, I am not taking you to court. She stopped gasping, staring at me in total confusion. You're not? Then why are you doing this?
Are you trying to blackmail me?
With what? I sneered. I don't want a single thing from you, Stephanie. I never have.
The point of this isn't extortion. The point is to look you in the eye and let you know that we knew.
David knew exactly what kind of parasite he married. He saw every lie, every manipulation.
And he documented it to protect me from you? Protect you?
She scoffed, trying to regain her arrogant footing, though her voice shook. You don't have anything worth protecting. You're practically penniless. Am I?
I reached into the back of the folder and pulled out the First National Bank
Sir,
summary statement.
Ma'am, you need to
I
come with
slid
us.
it across
What
the
is
wet
this?
table,
There's been a mistake.
right into her line of sight. I watched
Ma'am,
her eyes
hands where I can
scan
see
the
them.
page. I watched them hit the bolded number at the bottom. Dollar. 185,000.00. Stephanie literally gagged. She stumbled backward, her chair screeching violently across the hardwood floor. No, she wheezed. No, that's impossible. That's almost as much as the life insurance. That money belongs to the estate. It belongs to Emmy. I am his wife. And I stood up, towering over her trembling form. Am his mother. The woman who actually loved him. The woman who lent him $40,000 5 years ago, which he brilliantly invested and legally transferred solely into my name. It is untouchable, Stephanie. And so am I. You manipulative old witch. She screamed, tears of absolute fury and panic streaming down her face, ruining her flawless makeup. You are trying to steal my life. I'm not stealing anything, I said calmly, picking up my purse.
I'm just taking back what is mine.
You, on the other hand, are going to have a very hard time maintaining this massive house and your luxury lifestyle on a finite life insurance policy. Especially know that David isn't here to pay the bills while you play rich housewife. She collapsed back into her chair, the fight completely draining out of her body, leaving nothing but a pathetic, terrified shell. I can't, she sobbed into her hands, rocking back and forth. I can't lose everything.
Everyone expects me to have this life.
I can't be a nobody.
I walked over to the front door, my hand on the brass knob. I looked back at her one last time.
You're not losing everything, Stephanie. You are just losing the things that never truly belonged to you in the first place. I opened the door and stepped out into the blindingly bright afternoon sun. I left her there, sobbing over her ruined china and her shattered illusions,
Completely alone in a house that was about to become her financial prison. Sometimes, the absolute best revenge isn't revenge at all. It isn't screaming or fighting or taking someone to court. Sometimes, The most devastating revenge is simply the truth. Served ice cold. Right when
Sir,
they think they have
ma'am,
you beat.
you need to come with
And
us.
sometimes,
What is this? There's been a
if you are
mistake.
very, very blessed, it comes with a
Ma'am,
hefty
hands
bank
where I can see
balance
them.
and the profound, soul-healing knowledge that the child you raised turned out to be exactly the fiercely protective man you always hoped he would be. David had taken care of me after all.
Even from beyond the grave, my boy had stood between me and the wolves. And that,
More than the $185,000, more than the look of total defeat on Stephanie's face, was the greatest gift he ever could have given me. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
if you felt that justice was served today, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know down in the comments, how would you have handled Stephanie?
Your voice matters, and I read every single one.
Stay safe out there and remember, karma never loses an address.